Hey everyone, Mr. Allen here. I'm just going to quickly go over the concept of permutations. And again, this will be more conceptual than actually calculation. I want to make sure you understand what a permutation is, when they come up, and then the calculation itself becomes pretty easy at that point. So first, just syntax, NPR or P bracket NR is your permutation notation. You'll probably find one of those two on your calculator. Usually the first one here is the more common of the two. But again, what's going to be more important is sort of knowing when to use these. So the word permutation means arrangement. And so we'll only be using permutations or the concept of permutations when the order in which things occur or the order in which people are chosen or the order in which objects are arranged matters. And so if we look at Alex, Ben, and Chris here, and we assume they're maybe running some sort of a race, obviously if you're racing, the order in which you finish matters. And so when we look at the different possibilities here, we have Alex followed by Ben followed by Chris as one possible finishing combination. Alex could win, but then have Chris come in second and Ben come in third. We could also have Ben winning, followed by Alex, followed by Chris. And then, of course, we could have Ben followed by Chris, Alex, Chris winning, and the other two finishing in those orders. So we can see that given those three people, there are 6 different possible finishings, which means that if we are able to do this as a permutation, we should get an answer of 6. So here I've got P33. Again, PNR would be P33 as well, sort of written the other way. Gives an answer of 6. And maybe what's important here is to recognize what the N's and R's represent. N is the number of items, the total number of items from which we can choose. It's the old population from the things we did earlier in the semester. And R is the number of required items. So P33 again, basically saying permute, give me permutations of out of the 3 items from which I can choose, any orderings of 3 items. Slightly easier maybe to sort of think this through. You want to recognize for first place, there are 3 choices. For second place, of course, once my first place finisher has been chosen, I will have 2 remaining choices. And then third place, once my first and second place finishers have been chosen, there'll only be 1 possibility. And given what we did here, so Alex, Ben, Chris are the 3 possibilities for first place. Once Alex has been established as the first place finisher, I then have 2 choices for the second place finisher. Once he or she has been established, the third place finisher is automatically in their place. And so this is kind of the standard way to count through something with or without permutations. I have 3 possibilities for first, 2 possibilities for second, 1 possibility for third. Now, Dan comes along and he wants to join the race. P43, or again P43, becomes our calculation. And we can do exactly the same thing. We can sort of say, well, we have the possibility of having Alex finish, followed by Ben, followed by Chris, followed by Dan. We could also have Alex finish first, Ben still second, Ben still second, and then maybe have Dan sneak his way in front of Chris, and so on and so forth. We can kind of go through that pattern to establish the different choices we have. If we think about it in terms of the pure math, assuming we don't have a calculator just waiting to go here, I have 4 possibilities for my first place finisher. Once the first place finisher has been established, I am left with 3 possibilities for second, 2 possibilities for third, and 1 possibility for fourth, which is 24 different possibilities once that 4th place finisher has arrived, or so that 4th runner has arrived on the race, at the race. And so again, this is mostly just kind of trying to get across the idea of what is a permutation. and these are the 24 possibilities. So that's the idea of permutations. Again, punch this into your calculator and you'll get the answer 24. The actual calculation that goes on here, a little bit less important, but still maybe valuable to some extent. What the calculator does is 4 factorial, so 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, divided by, and then the denominator is going to be 4 minus 3 factorial. Again, just sort of the various possibilities there. Obviously, in this case, 4 minus 3 is just 1, and so this ends up being the same 4 factorial, which, as we said, was 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. And that's fairly simple for 4 people. If we ended up having 25 runners, though, and needing to find the top 3 and figure out how many different possibilities are there in this case, we don't want to have to do sort of too much work. Again, the logic still holds that there are 25 possibilities for first place, 24 possibilities for second place, 23 possibilities for third place. So that will be the end result when I do the calculation using the permutation button. The calculator does the same basic idea here. It does 25 factorial divided by 25 minus 3 factorial. And what that ends up being then is 25 factorial is 25 times 24 times 23 times 22 dot 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 all the way down to 1. 25 minus 3 is 22 factorial, so 22 times 21 times 20 dot 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 all the way down to times 1 on the end. And hopefully you can kind of see then that what I'm getting is a 1 divided by a 1, a 2 divided by a 2, and so on and so forth. There's a 21 in here, there's a 20 in here. And I get this 20 dividing by this 20, this 21 dividing into this 21, this 22 dividing into this 22, a 15 dividing into a 15, and so on. And all that I'll be left with in the calculation then is this value here, which, as we said, is exactly what we would get if we thought this through logically and just said, how many possible different people are there for the first place finish? 25, 24 for second, and so on. Where this obviously becomes more valuable is as the groups get bigger, and I don't have to necessarily kind of think about each and every position. If I have 25 people and I want to know how many possibilities are there for the first 20 finishers, or I have 250 people and I want to know how many different permutations, there are where I have a different top 20, then I get the 250 P20. And again, the calculator will do the work for me, save me some of the process of writing out into each individual placing. So for now, really, again, the most important part of this is to understand maybe a little bit what the syntax is. That permutation, by definition, means the order does matter, and then a lot of these questions will still be able to be done just using fairly decent logic. How many possibilities are there for my first value? How many possibilities are there for my second value? Multiply them through to get the answer. So even though we're in the permutation section here, it doesn't mean necessarily that that's our only option all the time. We may have to think a little bit about whether there are specific different values for each of the individual items I'm looking at.